My name is Jim Shepherd. I was principal cornet with the Black Dyke Mills Band for 10 years, between 1963 and 73. I was invited by the band to take principal cornet position because Maurice Murphy had decided to go professional. He went as principal trumpet with the BBC Northern Symphony Orchestra, and I must admit I was rather apprehensive in taking it, following Maurice. And initially I said I'd go, and then I changed my mind, and I felt a bit of loyalty to the Carlton Main Frickley Colliery Band, which I was playing with at the time. But some months later I decided the time was right, and I joined the band, and I spent 10 happy and successful years with them. I was very fortunate, really. I came from a musical family, and my father was quite an accomplished cornet player, and he set me off on the basics when I was about 8 or 9. But I didn't want to join a band. I just messed about with it. Say at Christmas I'd play carols and he'd write the fingering for me. I couldn't read music. But that's how I started. But at the age of 12, my friends and we heard that the Newbiggin Colliery Band, which was the band my father was in, were setting up a beginners group. So we all joined together, and I got hooked, and music became my life, really. I first heard Black Dyke when I was 13. I'd only been playing a year, and they came to Ashington in Northumberland and gave a concert, and it would be about 1949, I would imagine. And principal cornet was Willie Lang. Euphonium was the young, very young Jeff Whittam, and conductor was Alex Mortimer. And I can remember Willie playing the Albuquerque polka, and it really had a great impression on me because of this lovely sound Willie had, and of course a technique to go with it. And so that was the first introduction to Black Dyke, and just amazed with this sound they could produce, you know. Obviously the first win, first national win at the Albert Hall on Journey into Freedom, that was great because I think we'd won all the area contests up to that point, and we'd done at national level. We were getting seconds and thirds, and I was beginning to think I'll never do this, you know, get a first. And then 67 was the year Anne and I got married, so we didn't go to the Open that year. So it was a bonus that we won London on Journey into Freedom. I think the big test always was we used to do. I think I did 4 or 5 Friday night as music nights during my time with Dyke, and that was the ultimate test to me because it was live, you know, surrounded by the BBC Concert Orchestra and singers, and there's a guy called Jimmy Kingsbury used to announce it, and you'd play a march, and then orchestra would play and some singers, and then you'd be waiting 20 minutes, and then you had to get up and play a solo. So there's one in particular, I played a shortened version of Cleopatra, and it was just one of those nights I was on song, and got a great ovation, and that was very satisfying, you know, things like that. Yeah, when Versatile Brass obviously was the reason we left eventually, but I must make it clear that when we formed Versatile Brass, there's no way did we intend leaving our respective bands. I mean, Dyke were on a high, we'd just won the double the year before, and well, the same year actually. And anyway, I got a phone call from Geoffrey Brandon the January of 1973, and he said, could I meet him at the band room? And I went up, and he said he was, and at that time he was running the national championships with Peter Wilson, the editor of the British Bandsman, that bought Vaughan Morris out, and they were running the nationals. And he said he was commissioning a cornet solo by Ernest Tomlinson. Would I be prepared to play it? And I was delighted, obviously. But there's a tale that Dyke fell out with Vaughan Morris years previously, and they just would not do mass bands. So it came the crunch time when who would accompany me, and obviously I wanted Dyke, and so this great debate went on how they would do it. So initially they said they would accompany me only. They wouldn't play in the mass bands, but then it was pointed out that it wouldn't be feasible to bring the mass bands off and set Dyke up and play. But it went on quite a while. It went on for quite a while. And during that period, I had a real downer. I was burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. And I was doing far too much work, and I got run down, really. And I know it went on so long that Roy was emphatic that this rehearsal, he said, we must really put this to bed, you know, we must decide what we're going to do on this. And before they voted, I said, I don't want to do it, Roy. You know, and there was a stunned silence, but it was just the way I felt. And remember those days, you know, you had your contest and then 2 concerts in the evening, and I just felt at that time I couldn't do it. And so anyway, a couple of weeks went by, and I knew then there was a bit of rumblings in the band. There was a bit discontent because of VB. I mean, up to that point, we formed in spring 1972, and I think we did 2 concerts up to then. I mean, that Derek Southcote was professional. David Moore was with Grimethorpe. 2 of the lads, Brian Wood and Don Bowes, were with Hammonds. The rest of us were with Dyke, you know, and we just couldn't take engagements. And I honestly think it would have just fizzled out if it hadn't happened. But anyway, we received a letter from Peter Wilson. A fortnight later, would Versatile Brass fill that spot, which didn't go down well, obviously. And that was the start of it. I then received a nasty letter from Roy saying I would let the band down. And to me, that was like a dagger in the heart. And so through that letter, I resigned. I felt really upset about it, and I resigned. But the crunch was to come. The other 3, they gave them the ultimatum: either you play with Dyke at the contest or you play with VB. So, as you would know, they all came with the group. So it burned our bridges, and we had to go, and we had no repertoire, nothing, but we're determined to make it go. So, that's how it happened, and a very kind of bittersweet ending, because Philip McCann came to Dyke, and that probably the most successful period of their career, you know, of their being. And VB went on from strength to strength, so it was kind of bittersweet end to the proceedings. Well, there was a guy called Peter McNabb. He was quite a character. He used to compare the concerts and tell jokes. But for instance, one example is we went to Switzerland for the first time, and we had this, the Monday was free. I remember we had a day off, and we played for half an hour in the market square in Morges on Lake Geneva, and for the burgomaster and the local people. And then we went to a hotel for a kind of an ease-up, you know, and we're guests of a band called Melodia Band in Switzerland, and obviously it was our first introduction to wine. So the Swiss were teaching us to say Santé. We said cheers, you know, but they were saying Santé. So McNabb got round the Swiss people and says, well, in response you would say Frey Bentos. So all the Swiss, we were going Santé, and they were saying Frey Bentos. That was Peter, that was kind of the humour he had. And of course there was Jeff Whittam. Jeff, of course, my first job was Jeff's last on euphonium, and then he took over bandmaster, and he had some choice phrases in the band, some which I didn't repeat on this interview, but he was quite a character, was Jeff. Yeah, it was, well, first of all, I went to the Carlton Main Frickley Colliery Band from the North East in 1960, and the conductor was Jack Atherton, and he was absolutely brilliant with players. He would sit in the band room. I've seen him sit in the band room till midnight, teaching young players how to. And he got hold of me. I went down there. I was a bit raw, you know, but had some qualities there. And he was a fanatic for phrasing and shape in a phrase. And I learned more of him. I owe him a lot, to Jack Atherton, you know. And then, of course, Geoffrey Brand is inspirational. He came, and he turned the band around. We'd been going pretty good, but we built it up to that, and he came in '67, and he was instrumental and worked very hard. He worked the band hard as well, and so him. And the other one was a guy I met when Morris left to go to the Northern. There was an orchestra called the West Riding Schools Orchestra, And it was a 20-piece orchestra with ex-pros. And I think that's where Willie and Morris learned the trade, you know, the transposition. And they used to go around schools 3 days a week. And I got in on that. And in the brass section there was Wilfred Heaton, who was a lovely man. I got to know Wilf quite well. He played French horn. And when Roy left for the first time he left Dyke, of course he came back later, but in between, I told the band about Wilfred Heaton. He lived in Harrogate and he came down and had a brilliant 8 months because he was so musical. In fact, you know, it was virtually nearly spiritual what he had. He had this, such a nice man, but he had a way with him which was really amazing. So they were the 3 influences, conductor-wise. Well, I come from Frickley, who, I mean, obviously Dyke were the name band and they were much busier, so it took a lot of my time up, you know. My family, I think, often regret that my family came through and I didn't see a lot of them, a great deal of them. Credit to Anne, she virtually brought them up on her own. I was always off somewhere playing, and so in that respect, of course, when I joined Dyke, about within a year, there was a transitional period where, you know, the bread and butter jobs were park jobs. We used to do, and they were all local jobs, Wakefield, Keighley, Thorne, near Doncaster, and they were the bread and butter jobs for the band. But then suddenly we started getting the concert hall jobs, and we were going down to Colston Hall in Bristol and, you know, Albert Hall in Nottingham, and suddenly we're way much longer. So in that respect, time-wise, it took a lot more time. And of course, you had to practice more to keep the standards up. Yeah, I think the first one was when I went to Switzerland. You know, I'm a keen gardener, and I got to Switzerland the first time. We went as guests of the Melodia band, and they were brilliant with us. There's no fee involved, but they looked after us like lords. And but the first impact that country had on me was amazing. The snow-peaked Alps and the lush forests and the chalets, picture postcard chalets with geraniums and flower boxes, and it just knocked me out. You know, it was so beautiful, and the crowds. I mean, it was brilliant. The enthusiasm they had at concerts, and yeah, it was that first trip to Switzerland was something special. Well, I think Dyke have always kept that high standard, haven't they? They've always been there, and I think they're the benchmark for young players, for all players really. And you know, I think that is it. They've always kept the high standard, and I think it's so important that people go and hear them. And you know, well, at the present, I mean, Dyke are blazing away with new repertoire. They've introduced new repertoire, but and I think they've got to be careful, because I think you forget the general public at your peril if you know, people like to come and be entertained, and they like the old overtures, and so I think it's got to be a happy medium, and I would think they just got to be careful there with the general public. And youngsters starting, yeah. Well, I would think listening. That you know, when I was a peripatetic, I always used to tell the kids, I said, why do I speak like I do now with this Geordie accent? And a lot of them cottoned on, you know, why do you speak with your accent in Yorkshire? And I says, you listen, and it's repetition. You hear your parents talk to you in an accent, and I said it's the same with music. You know, listen to the top players. You know, not just brass players, violinists you can see. And I think a vital thing for them is to get the basics right. Then introduction of vibrato. I always found that the hard thing to teach, vibrato, because it's a, you know, it's a vital element in the end to warm your sound up, and when to use it, when not to use it. And so I think that's the advice I'd give them, to listen carefully. No, you know, I've had a really good life with it. I've enjoyed being in banding and VB, and teaching youngsters was always brilliant. And I would say, you know, if I had the choice, I'd do it all again. Mainly because I'm not good at much else, but apart from gardening. But yeah, I'd do it again, and I would like to think the legacy I left was I've inspired a lot of youngsters to play.